Real 2K Insider here, and we're going to be showcasing my NBA 2K24 roster, Real 2K rosters, the modern era. You can either search for the file name there or my user handle, Real 2K Insider. And we're just going to be doing a camp review. Today's date is October 11th. We've got about 2 weeks until the start of the regular season. So let's just review all the teams in order, things that I've picked out on in camp, starting with the 76ers. James Harden and Joel Embiid have yet to play in the preseason, so Tyrese Maxey's been playing at the 1. I anticipate that after Harden gets traded that I will be shifting Maxey's position to point guard, but for now, that's where it is. And that's, again, kind of based on how I view positions as who you're subbing with in the rotation. So, for example, PJ Tucker, I actually moved him down to small forward because in the most recent preseason game, he's actually in a substitution pattern with Kelly Oubre Jr. It is worth noting, of course, that the 76ers don't really have much in the way of actual power forwards. So the fact that Tucker is one of the few players on the team with power forward as a second position should ensure that he still gets a decent amount of playing time. Aside from that, not a ton other issues. Danny Green's been playing well in the preseason so far. I expect him to probably make the team. Montrezl Harrell is out for the season with a torn ACL, has a guaranteed contract, but I can imagine that the Sixers would probably waive him if it came down to it. It remains to be seen what the return would be in a potential James Harden trade with the Clippers if that comes to pass. Moving along to the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't believe the big three have played yet. Middleton has been cryptically sidelined so far. And Jay Crowder has been starting in his place at small forward. I believe Bobby Portis started at power forward in the first game. I can't remember if Giannis played the second game or not, or if it was Portis again at the 4. Michael Beasley started at the 2 in at least one of those games over Pat Connaughton. I expect that Beauchamp, Connaughton, Beasley, whoever ends up starting, I might end up switching around the positions a little bit. Andre Jackson Jr. looked good in his preseason debut. I originally had him at point guard. He did play a little bit of that in college, but based on how he was utilized, what lineups he was in, I've got him at a 3-4 right now. If we still had tertiary positions in next gen, like they do in old gen, I would have his third position as point guard. And the two-way guys, both at point guard, Ty Washington and Lindell Wigginton, have been playing well. I don't anticipate that either one will get a standard contract, as the Bucks have a full roster. But it is, something to keep an eye on, maybe for midseason after the trade deadline. Going over to Chicago, the big news so far is that Kobe White has been starting at point guard. And given White's progression over the years, he came into the league as a starter, but he wasn't really well equipped for it. And then they ended up getting DeRozan, and it kind of pushed, White became like a sixth man at that point. Well, and he basically worked on his defense, etc., over the last 2 years or so to really emerge as a quality NBA player. Ended up getting a deal in free agency worth $12 million a year. So it does make some sense. Also with Lonzo Ball being out. I always do that. Lonzo Ball being confirmed out for the next 2 years, or for the last 2 years. He's not going to play this year. He didn't play at all last year. The Bulls were kind of pussyfooting around with his injury prognosis last year, so they ended up not bringing in a point guard. Given that Ball's status going forward is a little, it's more clear that he's not going to be available. It probably makes more sense to convert Kobe White to point guard moving forward. As such, based on the substitution patterns, I ended up bringing Mitsumu back to the 1 and Javon Carter at the 2, and then having Alex Caruso at the 3. Those three guys will likely get PT next to each other. The Bulls did do a five-man shift in their preseason games, which I can't imagine is going to happen during the regular season. Like, they have to leave one of these three guys, if not two of them, on the floor at all times. They can't just go to a full bench shift. And worth noting that Patrick Williams, he's been okay, but he does have some stiff competition from Torrey Craig for the starting position, so she's not considered that guaranteed. And I don't think I have any more notes on them, so let's move over to Cleveland. Jarrett Allen's going to miss the preseason with an injury, so Evan Mobley has been starting at the 5, and they've been running a 4-guard alignment basically with Max Strus, LeVert, Garland, and Mitchell. I don't anticipate that's going to continue. Once Allen comes back, probably for the regular season opener, they'll go back to a normal rotation. Ricky Rubio hasn't been in camp. But I do think that generally when they've had availability issues, like they have gone to Dean Wade as a starter at the 4. But yeah, they're a little thinner on the bench this year, especially if Rubio's not available. Ty Jerome played okay in his preseason game though, so hopefully he can carry things over until Rubio's right to continue his career. Going over to Boston, they looked really good in their postseason debut, and then they sat all the five starters for Game 2. Peyton Pritchard's got his extension, and he's been on a tear this preseason. He's been in double figures in all the games, I believe. Porzingis looks pretty good as a stretch 4 or 5. Drew Holiday came off the bench in his first game, but I don't know if they rocked with White, Brown, Tatum, Porzingis, and Horford as the starters, basically using Holiday and Malcolm Brogdon's old role. Whether or not that continues in the regular season remains to be seen. It's an open question as to whether or not White will be the starter, or Horford, or whoever. But very interesting to see what happens. Worth noting that the Celtics don't really have much depth beyond those guys. I do need to edit Peyton Pritchard to get his rating up. Did it with Sam Hauser. Those are the key bench guys on this team. Wenya Gabriel is on an Exhibit 10 and not a guarantee to make the roster, or I think technically an Exhibit 9. But the fact that he's 7th in 2K rating kind of is a pretty big indicator of how shallow they are. But really, all of these guys that are rated lower than him, they should be higher than him. So that's something that I've got to work on. I have been working mostly on starting caliber players. I believe I have like 74 of the 150 starters in the NBA edited. So yeah, that's basically been where my focus is, focusing on the starters, and then I'll touch up the role players as we kind of go through the season. But certainly I would consider the Celtics role players higher priority than some other teams, especially since a lot of them are going to be getting 20 to 24 minutes a game, certainly. Going over to the Clippers, not really a ton of notes. Marcus Morris hasn't played yet. He's most likely going to be the matching salary for the in a James Harden trade with the 76ers. Worth noting that it's probably one of the biggest reasons why Harden's been held out is if he gets hurt or something, then he can't really be traded. So I imagine that the same thing is happening with Marcus Morris. Terrence Mann, I believe, started the 4-1 game, and Robert Covington in another. Or if Mann didn't start, he came off the bench at the 4 in one of those games. I anticipate that if Mann got moved to the Sixers, he would probably be playing the 2 with Maxey playing the 1. Otherwise, if they go into the season without making a trade, I would anticipate that Mann will end up at the 2, and that'll push George up to the 3 and Kawhi to the 4. But I could also just make Mann a 4, depending on how the rotations shake out. But I don't like having him at point guard. It's kind of a placeholder position for him at the moment, but Bones Highland has been getting the backup point guard duties this preseason, so Keep an eye on that. By the time the next time I do an update, I'll probably have shifted man's position. Going over to the Grizzlies. John Morant hasn't been playing this preseason, obviously due to his suspension. Marcus Smart's been starting in his place. Derrick Rose got some time at the one. I think John Conchar also got some token minutes at the one in one of the games, just kind of due to lack of availability for some players in the preseason. But I could end up switching his secondary position from the shooting guard to point guard, depending on how things shake out. Otherwise, not really any notes. Shaq Harrison's not going to make the opening night roster, most likely, but he would be back on a hardship exception after John Morant serves 5 games of a suspension, so that is worth noting. As far as the Hawks, yeah, I don't actually have many notes for them. I guess is worth noting that I updated the player heights and weights for all of the teams. It took me a couple days to record all of them. I guess one of the most noteworthy things for the Hawks is Trae Young's listed weight is 180, up from like 165. 165 is what he came into the league as a rookie. It's 5 years later, so I'm sure he's added a little bit of muscle. Him being 180, he's still not really stopping anybody defensively, but he's not as abominable as he was coming into the league. But I don't really have any notes on them. They're one of the more straightforward teams in the NBA. So let's move on to the Miami Heat. They did not get Dame, so Tyler Hero is a happy member of the Heat. Josh Richardson is probably going to be the backup point guard, or he could actually start at point guard over Kyle Lowry. Based on Lowry's advanced age, they do want to be a little careful with him, and he performed well with the second unit last year, so by default, he looks like he's the starter, but could end up being Richardson. There could be another trade. Kind of remains to be seen. Beyond that, they have a bunch of guys. Their other options at point guard are really dismal, and they also didn't bring in campaign or anything. They have been linked to a couple free agents. John Wall's a possibility. They don't want to bring in Goran Dragic because they don't like the idea of having two 37-year-olds as the point guards on the roster. And there was one other guy, but you're scraping the bottom of the barrel as far as veteran options go. Going over to the Hornets, Gordon Hayward's been starting at the 3 so far over Brandon Miller. I anticipate that Hayward will not finish the season with the team, so that's when, after the trade or after he gets waived at the deadline, I anticipate that Brandon Miller will enter the starting lineup. I don't believe Miles Bridges has been playing, also because of his suspension. And the team cut Kai Jones today. Kai Jones made himself famous this offseason by showcasing himself on Instagram and whatnot, having displaying questionable mental health. And it kind of remains to be seen whether any team will pick him up. He's worth a flyer on a 2-way deal, but given Jones's inflated opinion of himself, maybe he might not be willing to sign those kind of offers. But kind of sad to see him possibly have played himself out of a career. But he does get $3 million to not play this year, so there's that. Going over to Utah, nothing to really write home about yet with them. I think they've only played one game. They may actually have not played a game. I honestly can't remember. But they're similar to the Hawks. They're pretty straightforward as far as their roster goes. They do have a decision to make with Luka Samanic and Chris Dunn. And I guess also it remains to be seen whether or not John Collins can provide enough spacing at the 4 or whether they're better off sticking with Kelly Olynyk there. Sacramento, they've been they're on a little bit of a mission to prove all the haters wrong. They made the third seed last year, but all the experts have projected them to be like the sixth seed at best. They do have the profile of a regular season team because they are young, so that they can stay healthy than some of these other veteran teams, like the Warriors were, missing Steph Curry or Klay Thompson for 20 games, or Andrew Wiggins or whoever, is going to end up affecting you in the standings. And obviously they were able to beat Sacramento in the playoffs, but interesting to see the progression of Keegan Murray. I don't know how long Harrison Barnes is going to be on the team, as it does seem possible that Murray will eventually supersede him. Going over to the Knicks. Quentin Grimes has been starting over Dante DiVincenzo so far, which is kind of to be expected. Emmanuel Quickley's looked good so far. He's in extension talks with the Knicks. Josh Hart is probably going to play power forward this year, given how deep they are at the guard wing position and how thin they are at power forward, given that Isaiah Roby's on a non-guaranteed deal, basically a fringe NBA player. They traded Obi Toppin during the off-season for some draft picks, but otherwise pretty quiet in New York. Let's go to the Lakers. I did shift LeBron James to power forward and Rui Hachimura to small forward based on some rotation stuff. Gabe Vincent's been like the sixth man on the team, playing point guard and shooting guard, backing up both Russell and Reeves, which makes some sense given that they were pretty thin there, as Max Christie is the only natural backup two on the roster for the most part. They have been utilizing Anthony Davis in double big lineups. Whether or not you consider Christian Wood or Jackson Hayes the power forward or the center in those lineups may be semantics, but he's essentially been in like a three-man rotation with those guys, although I don't think... I have to see what their rotation was. I'm recording this video before they play tonight, the Lakers do. But Taurean Prince has been... All the second positions look pretty good. Prince has been playing the three. Cam Reddish is probably going to be out of the rotation when everybody is healthy. And yeah, they could probably stand to pick up another guard, but I'm not exactly sure. I think they still have an open roster spot, to be honest. Scottie Pippen Jr., by the way, is not on a two-way deal. I just use that for roster stuff. Actually, I'll showcase this real quick. The reason why I have him on a two-way deal is to keep an open roster spot. So Michael Foster today actually got signed by the Washington Wizards on an Exhibit 10. So what I'm going to do is we're going to add him to the Lakers, because that way I can put him on a two-way contract. Release him. And because the Washington Wizards have a full roster of standard contracts, but they have a open two-way slot in the free agent pool, Foster maintains his two-way distinction. We can just add him to the Washington Wizards, and then doing so actually removes his two-way distinction. So he's just on their roster as an extra guy. So that's essentially why I have Pippen on a two-way, because otherwise the Lakers would have 15 roster spots, and I wouldn't be able to do that trick anymore. Obviously, as there are cuts made in camp, I will adjust accordingly. And also add in all the missing players once 2K adds them in at season launch. All the Lakers two-way contract guys are currently not in the game, and I'm not going to sift through and make caps for all of them. I'm just going to download them from 2K Share, or not from 2K Share, but from when they release the official roster. I will download their player DNAs and then upload them to my roster. Orlando Magic, really the only notable so far. Jonathan Isaac has been playing. He's healthy. That's a good sign. Jalen Suggs started over Gary Harris, so that is a change that I made with the rotation. Other than that, no notes. So going over to Dallas, Luka Doncic. Whether or not, I just refuse to have him at point guard when he always plays with another point guard over the last how many some odd years. 2K's had him at point guard for however long. He never guards point guards, and he's never in a substitution rotation with point guards. So he's yet to play in a game together with Kyrie Irving. Or no, that's not true. He played in the opener with Kyrie Irving, but Tim Hardaway Jr. was not in that game. So it was kind of an open question of like because the other two guards on the Dallas Mavericks are essentially kind of point guards. It was a little difficult to ascertain what position I should have Luka at. I did shift him down from small forward as it looks clear that either Josh Green or uh, Olivier Maxence Prosper are going to get the start at the three. Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to be the sixth man. But anyway, in their most recent game against Real Madrid, Luka played 5 minutes, and when he subbed out, Tim Hardaway Jr. subbed in. So take that for what it's worth. It's something I'm going to continue to evaluate moving forward. But for right now, I've got Luka at the 2. Brooklyn Nets, similarly, Ben Simmons. Reports are he's going to play point guard. He's going to play point guard. Well, he started at the 4 in his most recent game in the Nets preseason debut that they had. Cam Johnson sat out, so Mikal Bridges was at the 3. Cam Thomas started at the 2, and when Ben Simmons subbed out, Dorian Finney-Smith came in for him. So that's why I've got Simmons at the 4. And as far as Simmons playing point guard, he spent 1 minute there until Dinwiddie checked back in for Dorian Finney-Smith. So, yeah, Simmons, I've got his second position at point guard, but based on the rotations and all that stuff, I think that it's safe to have him at the 4. Also worth noting that he rates significantly higher at the 4 than he does at point guard due to his A, lack of shooting ability, B, lack of ball handling ability. He does not get involved in pick and roll actions. He's more likely to be the roll man than the initiator in those situations. I'm pretty comfortable with him being in the 4, and that also means that we shift Royce O'Neal down to the 3 as he was subbing in for Mikal Bridges in that game. Lonnie Walker was subbing with Cam Thomas. It's actually a change that I need to make. Hold on. Well, the reason I don't make that change yet is Cam Thomas was out. Actually, I will make that change. I think this is more appropriate, as this will be their 2-man rotation at a 3. Bridges will still get some fair amount of time at the 3. And, yeah, okay. So it is worth noting that they are thin at the 1 still, unless you're counting. You're essentially counting Ben Simmons as their third-string point guard. Dennis Smith Jr. got the bulk of the backup point guard minutes otherwise behind Dinwiddie. Going over to the Nuggets, the defending champs. Not really any notes. Peyton Watson came off the bench at 3. Hunter Tyson, he was a 4, so let's make that adjustment. I updated it in my sheet, but sometimes I don't always update it in the game. He's essentially the backup 4 because Vlatko Cancar is going to miss the entire season with, I think it was a torn ACL. Otherwise, pretty straightforward team. They are pretty thin. Justin Holiday might end up as a 3 rather than a 2. Depending on the rotations, maybe Strother ends up as a 2 rather than a 3, but we're looking at, we're nitpicking the bottom of the roster or rotation at that point. Going over to the Pacers, Bruce Brown started at the 2, but was also the backup point guard. Worth noting that Andrew Nembhard has yet to play in the preseason. Benedict Mathurin started at the 3. Obi Toppin started at the 4. Buddy Hield, I'm not sure, in the absence of Andrew Nemhard, he was getting all of the. He came off the bench at the 2 guard, so he was actually playing the 2 with Bruce Brown at the 1 in some lineups. So I think I'm actually going to adjust his position to. 2's his natural position. He's just been playing the 3 the last couple years due to the depth charts. And I think one of these guys ends up at the 1. I'm not sure how long TJ McConnell is going to be on this team. Let's, for argument's sake, say that Nemhard is the backup 1 ahead of McConnell. Then you've got Neesmith at the 3. Jarris Walker has been playing over Jordan Nwora, so I got to get his rating up. And Daniel Tice, is basically salary filler, waiting to get traded, although none of the other options at center are really great for the Pacers either. Moving along to the Pelicans. Trey Murphy is out for the first couple weeks of the season. Alvarado and Larry Nance are projected, ? To be ready for the season opener. So it's thrown off the depth chart for the Pelicans a little in the preseason. Kira Lewis is getting his first big opportunity. He's dealt with a lot of injuries in his career, but he's basically the backup point guard if Alvarado's not ready to go. Who was their backup 3? I guess Malcolm Hill, actually, because it's preseason, has been playing a fair amount. I think he ends up with one of the 2-way spots. Najee Marshall's been playing at the 4. And Zion Williamson has been playing some backup center. Again, worth noting that Larry Nance has not been available, and the only other guy that they have at the 5 would be Cody Zeller. So that is something that they are going to try with Zion moving forward, because that way, when everybody's healthy, they can play Ingram and Murphy together in the same lineup. That's probably their best lineup overall. Going over to Detroit. Jaden Ivey has been coming off the bench with Alec Burks as the starter, given that Burks is they actually are trying to win some games, and I don't mind having Ivey, A, earn it in preseason, and B, be able to take over as like a scorer on the second unit, similar to like Tyrese Maxey with the 76ers. Gunning for like 6th man of the year and whatnot. That's kind of how he profiles anyway. So did I make that change? Yeah, I made that change with their rotations so far. Wiseman and Bagley are gunning for the right to back up Jalen Duren. So I probably got to get their ratings down a little bit. Asar Thompson started at the 3, but Bogdanovich hasn't played yet. But he was pretty impressive, so maybe that's also something that could stick. Although, personally, I would just want to maximize the shooting that I have around Cade so that he has a lot of room to work. Isaiah Stewart's been good, and again, I have not updated everybody's ratings yet, but clearly Stewart is a player that should have a higher rating than Wiseman or Bagley. Just putting that out there. Joe Harris, he was playing at the 4 behind Stewart. Worth noting that Isaiah Livers, who's got a similar-ish body type, he's out for a couple weeks with an injury, and that helps make the depth chart a little clearer, as you can't play Bogey, Asar, and Joe Harris. So given that they were thin at the 4, I think this change makes a lot of sense. Going over to Toronto. I really don't know what's going on with Toronto. They got involved late on the Dame stuff. Scotty Barnes, he might be like the starting point guard on this team. I have to actually watch the games, but he was kind of utilized as a point guard, and Dennis Schroeder as a 2 guard in the substitution pattern. So holding off a little bit, and then OJ Anunoby can play his more natural 3. Keep an eye on that. Need more data to figure things out. They have to make a trade this season. They can't keep running it with the same core, I don't think. But we'll see. Worth noting that Kevin Porter Jr. was not on the Rockets training camp roster despite being under contract, so pretty clearly his days with the team are done. Um, I probably need to get his rating a little bit lower. Once they figure out what they're going to do with him, I'll probably, if he ever gets waived, I'm probably just going to delete him from the roster to prevent teams from signing him. But similar to Lonzo Ball, he's kind of like he's going to mess up a lot of simulations, especially the ones when you start with without injuries active, as it throws him back in the rotation. So gonna have to figure out what to do with him. Aside from that, I don't really think I have any notes on this team. Need to get Jock Landale's rating up higher. But I think that's it on them. Wemby had his preseason debut and looked really good. Aside from that, also his listed height and weight. He started off at 7'4", 210, and then with the official listings on the training camp roster, he was 7'3" and 230. So I made those adjustments. I believe they cut someone. Might just be campaign. Might be thinking of. They still have one more guy to cut. Oh yeah, they cut Reggie Bullock, right? So probably Kem Birch is going to be the last casualty. He's yet to play in the preseason. That's my general guess based on the rest of their roster. Chetty Osman and Doug McDermott both played and looked pretty reasonable. Phoenix Suns, they declared that Bradley Beal was going to be the starting point guard, but then in the actual execution of the rotation, I decided it was actually Devin Booker. It's kind of a, eye of the beholder type of thing, as they're both career two guards. Definitely not an ideal situation. Eric Gordon, also I've got tentatively as a point guard. The absence of Damian Lee due to a knee injury cleared things up a little bit for that logjam. Grayson Allen played the 3 in his first game with the team, but then was at the 2 in the second game. Started the 2, I believe, in the second game. Came off the bench as a 3 in the first game for Josh Okogie. Bull's kind of all over the place. I've got him as a center slash shooting guard. He played the 2 in game 1 and then the 5 in game 2. So I like him as like the third string. I need to get his rating down as he is behind Eubanks on the depth chart. But one of the more interesting like novelty players, and we'll see how much he can contribute for the team this year. Keon Johnson's probably not going to play or make the team, but he did get some run during the preseason so far. Yeah. Bates Diop has been playing mostly at the 3, so I've got him at the 3 rather than the 4. Ditto for Nasir Little. Whoever plays more, probably going to be based on matchups. Chimezi Metu, I've got him back at the 4. He played mostly the 5 the last 2 years, I believe. But he came into the league as a 4. He's only 6'9", 225. But he's another guy, like I need to get Yuta Watanabe over him, as he's been Durant's primary backup. So yeah, things are coming along with them. OKC, they haven't cut anybody yet. They're kind of a mishmash of positions until we figure out who's going to actually make the team. They did get some updated player heights and weights. Chet Holmgren now weighs 208 rather than 195. Isaiah Joe gained 16 pounds. Poku gained 10 pounds. He's up to 220. Jalen Williams, 10 pounds, up to 250. Wiggins up an inch and gained 10 pounds. Trey Mann gained 12 pounds. So yeah, no further notes until they knock some heads on their roster. Minnesota's looked pretty good so far. That's the first, they Cat and Gobert really didn't get to play much during the preseason, and then Cat had injuries issues the entire year. So they don't be surprised if they make some waves this season after barely making the playoffs last season. I think another year with a better Towns will probably help their fortunes quite a bit. And aside from that, I really liked what their like bench rotation has looked like. They essentially have Anderson, Gobert, Towns, and Reed in like a four-man rotation with no minutes available for anybody else. So the guys at the bottom of the roster, like Josh Minot, Leonard Miller, etc., really won't get much playing time. They really have a solid like top 11 guys on this roster. Jordan McLaughlin being the 11th man, and then the other 10 guys up here. Shake Milton's look good as the backup point guard. Um, yeah, I expect good things from Minnesota this year. Portland, kind of a mixed bag. Brogdon's in an interesting spot where I would actually have him as a two normally, and like his primary position being point guard. Because Anthony Simons is real, like he basically Simon subs out. It's similar to rotation that the Charlotte Hornets have with Ball and Rozier. Rozier will sub out for a two guard and then sub back in at point guard for Lamelo. Simons subbed out for Shaden Sharp or Brogdon, one of the two, and then Simon subs back in for Scoot Henderson. Um, Unfortunately, that's a little difficult to replicate. If you have all three of these guys at two guard, being Brogdon, Simons, and Sharp, it's going to mess with the like the trade engine for the team. They're going to want to acquire a point guard because they don't have any other main roster option, and they're going to say, "Oh, well, we have an excess of shooting guards," and they might end up trading like Shaden Sharp or Simons as a result, rather than Brogdon, especially since Brogdon is like the highest, one of the highest rated guys on the team for the moment. Saw a little bit of Scoot Henderson. He looked good. Probably going to boost his rating a little bit. I think ideally you'd want to have him rated higher than Brogdon. I do have force non-starter on Brogdon to prevent him from starting. He didn't start at all last year. He was the sixth man for the Boston Celtics, sixth man of the year, in fact. So um, totally reasonable to have that setting on him here as well, as obviously they're prioritizing the young guys. Any other notes on them? Nah, not really. Yeah, all right. Moving on to Golden State. Chris Paul started with Stephen Curry, so I adjusted their positions. Steph Curry's a 2 this year, and Klay Thompson's going to be a 3. Draymond Green has yet to play due to an injury. He's probably going to be out like the first week of the season. I haven't done that yet in my roster, as I just want to confirm that he will miss the start of the regular season before I update that. But otherwise, like with everybody healthy, I anticipate that Andrew Wiggins is going to come off the bench, as that would he would best be out of all these guys. He would be the most apt to like pick up a six man scoring type of role with like higher usage, similar to what he did with Minnesota. Because ideally, I think you'd want to maximize the shooting around Chris Paul, and especially if you are going to be running Draymond and Kevon Looney. Alternatively, Draymond could start at the 5 and then bring Looney off the bench, but I think they really like what Looney brings to the team, and then that messes with the rotation also, because then Dario Saric is completely out. You know, aside from that, yeah, not really any notes. And then the Washington Wizards won a game by 63 points against the New Zealand Breakers, who nobody had it on their bingo card that the Wizards would win a game by 60 points. They're probably the most likely team to get blown out by 60 points. Uh, it, somebody on the Breakers was like a minus 54 for the game. And I kind of quipped that It's unbelievable that I anticipate that either Poole or Kuzma will record a -54 at some point this season, but it's still preseason, you know. Aside from that, I think Gallinari played at the 5 in this one, which is like bizarre to like think about considering he came into the league as a small forward, but it does make some sense given that they are thin at the 5 and have a boatload of options at the 4. Also signing Michael Foster today, who we will actually nope, we don't have to do anything. He's on an Exhibit 10. It's possible that he could get a two-way deal, but I anticipate they'll probably get waived and join the Capital City Go-Go. They do have to make a roster decision. I think one of these guys ends up getting cut. They do have a new GM, so who didn't bring, they brought in Xavier Cooks at the end of the year, and they've had Anthony Gill as like kind of a locker room presence that, he's okay. So one of those guys might get cut. They brought in Taj Gibson for the locker room veteran role. And Ryan Rollins probably also gets cut and maybe re-signed to a two-way as he hasn't really shown much to warrant a standard contract position. Pretty clear, like he's a guy that should be getting like a two-way deal once he hits the waiver wire. Landry Shamet is also injured, but similar to Draymond, I just want more information on whether or not he's going to miss any games in the regular season before I make that adjustment. His absence should open things up a little bit for Johnny Davis. And yeah, that's where we're at in preseason at the moment. Thank you guys for watching. And again, if you want to download that, my roster, it's Real 2K Rosters, the modern era. You can search my gamer tag on Real 2K Insider. And also consider subscribing to my Patreon, patreon.com/RealTakeRosters, where you can get access to my gigantic roster spreadsheet. It is the most massive document available for 2K roster editors, reviewing all of the player attributes, positions, the contract information, all that stuff. Badges, I update the badges for every single player, unlike 2K Sports. So that is where all that data is available. And otherwise, have a great day, and we'll check back later. Peace.